I'm Deb Bussinger, Program Coordinator at the Leesburg Public Library, and today we're hosting a very special event outside in our amphitheater as part of the Amp It Up series that we started this year. We thought it was really important to be able to bring people together for our library programming, and how lucky are we to have this beautiful space. So today is Dirty Dog Organics with Aubrey Cash, who is the owner, and she is teaching a program on Grow a Salad. Aubrey, tell us about your farm and your program.
Thanks, Debbie. So our farm is located in Leesburg, Florida. We're a community-based farm. We've been serving the community and surrounding areas since 2017. Today's feature, we're going to teach people how to grow heat-tolerant varieties of lettuce, leaf and head lettuce, so they can sustain their families through our long growing season, which is typically September through July. And I'm excited to be able to share these tips because right now, especially with COVID, we've seen a lot of upsurge in our seed buying as well as our plants, and people wanting to become more sustainable with home gardening. So I'm excited to share some of our tips, some of our things that we've learned, and hopefully get them on the road to successful growing in Florida.
Thank you so much. We can't wait. And on to our show. Thanks, Aubrey.
We're in a pretty significant seed shortage right now in our country. A lot of that has to do with COVID. And the other factor to that is Oregon and California had some pretty significant wildfire damage to a lot of their seed farms. And the majority of our seeds come from the West Coast. They're also dealing with some drought. So there's been some disruptions in that chain, as well as COVID shutting down production. And then, of course, when COVID took scene last year, a lot of people panicked when the grocery stores were running low, and so they wanted to sustain, which I think is why we're seeing such a big turnout when I do public speaking, is because people really want to get back to basics. They want to learn how to supplement their food by growing it themselves, sustain themselves, and just being a little more, I don't know, earthy. Let's just say earthy. So yes, Johnny Select Seed, you would go online to order those. They are shipping out pretty quickly given the circumstances that they're working with. So I would say 2-3 weeks, I don't want to quote that, but 2 to 3 weeks you should have your seeds. Very reasonable prices. The reason we love Johnny's is because they're employee owned, number one, and number two, they mark all of their germination rates on their seed packets. So that gives me a really good idea as a grower how many seeds I'm going to have to sow to get a decent germination. It's helpful. Question? Yes, sir.
Johnny Seeds only does lettuce?
So Johnny Seeds does everything. They have a ton of products. They have probably, I want to say, 3,000 different varieties of vegetables alone. So yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Great store. You're going to find a lot. The ones I listed on this paper, these are heat tolerant. We bolt very easy in Florida. I'm sure if you guys have dabbled a little in Florida, you realize things go to seed rather quickly. So it was really important that I put on the heat tolerant. I want you guys to be successful in growing. I don't want you to start growing and get aggravated and walk away. That's not the goal. We're trying to get sustainable. So Johnny Seeds has a ton of different vegetables. The ones that we're talking about today are just obviously your salad mixes. Question in the back?
Since the plants go to seed real easily, can we save the seeds?
Save seed. I recommend saving as much as possible right now. Number one, the benefit to saving seed is they're going to be more acclimated to our climate. So the more you grow in your climate, the more you save, the more acclimated and pest resistant and disease resistant those seeds become. So your crops should only get better with yields and disease and pest resistance. So seed saving is great. Lettuce is very easy to save. You'll get a long shoot out the top. I'm sure you guys have seen this. It goes to flower. The bees love it. You're feeding the bees. And then it goes to seed. Cut that stalk and just shove it in a brown paper bag. Shake the seed out, and you've got your seed for next season. So great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Questions?
Is there a particular brand of compost you use as far as organic, or you make your own?
So she asked, is there a specific brand of compost we use? The answer to that is yes and no. We don't use a brand. We use a local company and they're out of Okahumpka. However, many people use Monterey mushroom here, which is in, I believe, Apopka area, if I'm not mistaken. Zellwood. So they also sell very inexpensive composting. Our farm cannot utilize that because it's not tracked. We sell to the public, so food safety, we have to have tracking. The general public can use that. It's much less expensive. I also recommend worm castings. Those do an excellent job of amending the soil. The great thing about lettuce, it doesn't take a lot. Meaning when you plant lettuce, it doesn't take a lot out of your soil. It grows, it's happy, it doesn't need a lot of water. We just did a trial crop of beautiful romaine head lettuce that received zero irrigation the entire time it was in the field. We are in dry season, as you all can tell, and it was perfect, perfect. So it doesn't take much, and actually, the more you deprive lettuce, you don't want to overwater it, you don't want to overbaby it, but the more you deprive lettuce, it tends to do better, especially in the real winter months. Yes, ma'am?
You have more handouts, we didn't get any.
We do, and I'll have someone bring you guys. How many copies do we need? A few? Okay, I'll send somebody up. Question? Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered about saving seeds. That sounded pretty easy. Is there anything else to know about other kinds of seeds that you didn't already see?
So she wants to talk a little more about saving seed. I'm glad you guys are talking about this. This is good. Yes, many seeds are easy to save, such as lettuce. However, the more difficult seeds to save are going to be your tomatoes, your peppers, truly your nightshade seeds. Those really take, you pretty much have to do a fermentation process to successfully save those seeds through germination. That is quite a process. It's a 2-week process that I would look up. You can Google it. If you don't want to do that, because even myself as a farmer after farming 7 years struggles with saving tomato and pepper seeds, you can always buy multiple seeds at Johnny's or really any home gardening. Yes, ma'am.
Are we in zone 9 here?
Yes, good question. So we are in zone 9, and depending on where exactly you are in Lake County, you're either in A or B. It doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference, but for example, zone 9 also goes to Claremont, they're zone B. So their freeze and frost dates are a little off from zone A, about a week or two. So great question. Yes, ma'am.
I missed the beginning of your talk right here. Did you say now was a good time to grow lettuce?
I'm sorry, what month?
What's the best time to grow lettuce?
So that's going to be in your handout, but the best time to grow lettuce, leaf lettuce, they're getting some more. They're getting some more. The best time to grow leaf lettuce is September through June. You can grow leaf lettuce. It's, again, the preferred crop. Let me just move out of the way. It's the preferred crop when starting out in our early months and finishing out in our later months because of the heat. It's quick. We can cut it fast. It doesn't bolt as easy. So leaf lettuce to start out in our warmer months. So you want to use that like September, October, even in November. And then you're going to start wanting to plant that again in March, April, May. So leaf crops. Any more questions over here? Yes, sir.
I've got maybe kind of a dumb question, but if
I like dumb questions.
okay, I'd like to build something like a raised bed, like that. And how do you keep rabbits out and stuff like that? Do you put a little fence around it?
So this gentleman would like to build a raised bed. Perfect, by the way. I recommend raised beds, especially if you're struggling with our soil in Florida, or our sand, I like to say. In Florida, raised beds are a really inexpensive way to get some decent yields, especially if you're doing a shallow, but like 4x4 raised beds. Again, doesn't take a lot of root space if you're growing your leafy greens. Perfect, perfect, yeah. Anywhere from a 6 to 8 inch depth is more than enough to grow lettuce. In terms of rabbits, he would like to know how to keep the rabbits out. I recommend building a fence. You can also sprinkle mothballs around your garden beds. I know, it's an old trick, but it works. And you can also plant onions, scallions, garlic, Anything that I love that animals find offensive, and those typically are the things they find offensive and they won't enter your garden space. They don't want to cross it, they don't want to smell like it. So I would recommend companion planting, mothballs, or a small fence. We don't typically have on our farm a tremendous amount of rabbit pressure. We have the occasional nibbler, but I find them cute and amusing, so they stay on the farm. Yes?
In storing the seeds, I know you said how to get them off of there in the brown bag, but once they've dried out, what do you store them in?
So cool, dark place, storing seeds, best place. This is if you purchase them, you don't use all of them, and you need to store them. This is if you seed save and you need to store them. I personally use my freezer. I use that because I was taught that. We have no problems with our germination, and I know where they are every season, and they're not getting damp. We're very humid in Florida. So wherever you store them, it needs to be cool, no humidity, and dark, and that's the best way to store them. Paper always works best in storing. That's why a lot of them come in paper envelopes. Plastics tend to build humidity, and they'll ruin your seed germination. Yes, ma'am.
Storing seeds, do you have to have organic seeds to store?
Okay, so she just asked a really great question in storing seeds. First of all, I'm shocked how many questions I'm getting about seed saving and storage. It's blowing my mind. It's also really fascinating that so many people are looking at storing seeds. So yeah, keep going, guys. That's amazing. In terms of seed storage, which seeds you can save and which seeds you can't. Your heirloom variety seeds, open pollinated, heirloom variety seeds, those are the ones you're going to want to store. When you start getting into hybrids, which are not GMOs, hybrids have just been bred, more resistance to disease and pest, stronger yields, just easier to grow in general. They've bred them that way. There are hybrids you can save. You need to read the information packets to find out if they're eligible to save those seeds, because a lot of times you'll get germination and those seeds will grow plants, but a lot of the hybrids will not bear fruit.
That was my real
Yeah. Yeah, so open pollinated heirloom, hands down the easiest. And then you'll just have to do some research if you're interested in saving some of the other seeds. Tomato seeds specifically, many of those that are hybrids will not produce fruit. And you had a question.
Sell to the public.
Do we sell to the public? We do. We do. I'm only giggling because recently we've had to modify our farm a little bit, which is why you saw that little chuckle. We do sell to the public. We're finishing out this season selling to the public. We have an online farm store where you can order even our plants and some of our seeds online. And our hours are reduced this year, due in part of COVID and also some unexpected construction that we're having to do on the farm. We've had to condense our hours quite tightly for walk-in traffic, but we're open Saturday from 10 to noon to walk-in traffic. We have our seeds as well as our plants available and our farm's produce, which right now I think we're stocking about 35 items. We're in transition to warm crops, as you guys can tell. So once we get into full spring, we'll be back up to around 50 to 60 crops. And that starts usually in April when we start harvesting. So yes, we sell to the public, online mostly right now, in our condensed hours through the rest of our season, which our season closes mid-May usually. We start putting our cover crops into the fields. So we start closing the farm down around mid-May. But we'll still be able to do a little bit of online shopping through the end of May with home delivery. Yes, sir.
What is the website again?
So our website, www.dirtydogorganicsfarm.com. It's a great resource. We also do a weekly, it's become mostly bi-weekly and monthly at this point when we're in season, but we do a weekly newsletter where we talk about some of the things that we're talking about today throughout the different seasons, and we do recipes and any farm happenings. I mean, if you guys are on Facebook, that's honestly the best resource for our farm. That's where I put everything out because it's super simple, We have a significant following, and we have people that are gracious enough to share our information within the community. So Facebook's a great resource too. Yes, ma'am.
Are you a CSA?
We are a CSA. We're a CSA, and we're also a retail farm to the community. Our CSA opens up over the summer. This summer, we've opted not to do a CSA. We're going to offer wholesale pricing or membership pricing next year to everyone. And the reason that we're doing that is because, number one, we sold out of our CSA rapidly last year. And we didn't feel that it was super fair to the rest of the community because it's a huge cost savings to the consumer. And it also benefits the farmer because we get all the funds up front to start our season. However, with COVID and the uncertain economic times, we didn't feel it was appropriate to ask our community members to fork out mass amounts of money up front to start our season so that they could have vegetables all day long. So every week we're gonna do a weekly box that's gonna include everything that's in the box, and you have the option to buy that box every week at wholesale pricing. It's no contract, no membership. It's just if you want the box, great. You buy it, you pick it up, you're done.
That's awesome. What's your address?
100, it's 2026 Lewis Road, Leesburg. So we are off the Red Road, if you guys are familiar with the Red Road. Is anybody familiar with the Red Road?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna talk a little bit about shade, because I'd like some right now. Okay, shade. So lettuce actually grows best in full sun. Great, we live in the Sunshine State. So when you guys are planting your crops, specifically late October through, let's say, early March, you can plant those babies in full sun all day long and they'll be just fine. You might have a couple that bolt, but no big deal. You'll get a nice crop. When we start getting into the later months, anything mid-March and on, you're gonna wanna utilize shade. We're fortunate at our farm, we have massive granddaddy oaks at our farm that allow us to start migrating those cool crops under those oak trees so they're protected from the afternoon direct sun. And we can extend our lettuce growing, even head varieties, through July by doing that. So keep that in mind. If you don't have a shade structure, there's a great tip on this paper on where to position your gardening or your containers so that your house or any other structure shades it. And I believe that's on the east side, if I'm not mistaken. So if you don't have great structure, natural structure, utilize housing, utilize buildings, you know, put an inexpensive shade cloth up. It doesn't matter, they're gonna have to have shade. That also goes for the early season stuff. So when you're planting in September, bear that in mind. You're gonna wanna put them protected from afternoon sun. Does everybody understand that concept? Pretty much? Or do you want me to elaborate a little more?
Yeah, please elaborate.
Elaborate, okay. So shade, they do okay in the morning sun because we're not incredibly hot, especially this time of year, still mild in the morning. When we start getting into the afternoons, like right about now, I feel like I'm melting. Anybody else feel like they're melting? You're gonna wanna protect them from the afternoon sun, and you can do that by planting them under shaded trees, create a garden spot or put them in containers, or make an additional bed there, or utilize your building, your home. There's a side of your home, and I believe it's the east side, that is protected from the afternoon sun. So you would want to situate your later plantings in those areas. So they're still getting light in the morning, but they're protected from that very hot, unforgiving afternoon sun. And that'll extend you guys out a couple of months in lettuce production, including head lettuce. So does that make sense? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stop for a minute and ask questions again. Who's got questions since we covered a little bit more? Deb has questions.
I would like to grow lettuce and tomatoes and really grow a salad this summer. Is that possible?
Yes and no. Dad wants to grow lettuce and tomatoes for salads this summer. Is that possible? Yes and no. On this handout, I talk about that a little. The lettuce that you're gonna grow in the middle of the summer is gonna be, first of all, we don't grow in the summer in our fields. We're in greenhouses in the summer, and that's because it's miserable in the summer in Florida. And I'm sorry if you guys love heat, I don't. I'm a Floridian and I hate our summers. I'm going to be a reverse snowboard when I grow up. We can grow some. You're going to want to do really heat-tolerant varieties, and those are going to look a little different for us than our traditional lettuces. Those varieties which are noted in here, hold on to your pants, this might blow some of your minds. Sweet potato vines. Have you guys ever had sweet potato leaves? You should try them, they're delicious. And they're packed full of more nutrients than you can find in any lettuce, guaranteed. So you pick them young, you pick them tender, and you can supplement some of your lettuces and your salad blends with those so you're not consuming as much from the grocery store. Malabar spinach. Anybody heard of Malabar spinach? Okay, that's an Asian variety spinach. It is a heat lover. It's absolutely beautiful. It vines out, so make sure you trellis it or it's gonna go crazy. Again, tender leaves. You can also saute those leaves if you want. Eat them fresh or sauteed. The beautiful thing about Malabar spinach is when it goes to flower, when it goes to seed, which you can continue to harvest as it's going to seed, it produces what looks like black peppercorn, and that is their seed. That's what you would plant for the next season. You can also use those beautiful black peppercorn seed as pepper, and it's very smoky. It's mild, but it's got definitely that peppery hue on the back end, so it's a delightful addition to any salad or dressing. So yes, you can grow a couple. As far as leaf lettuces or head lettuce, unless you're in a controlled environment or you're really skilled at growing in Florida in summer, you're not gonna have great success. Too much disease, too much humidity, and definitely too much heat. Questions? Yes, sir.
Talk about tomatoes. I know so many people that say you can't grow tomatoes in Florida like you used to up in...
There's some truth to that statement. He wants to talk about tomatoes. I did a whole segment on tomatoes, believe it or not, because so many people want to grow them in Florida. He said he's heard you can't grow them in Florida, and that's partly true. There's some varieties that do very well in Florida, but they do require a little more than what our northern counterparts have to put into their tomatoes. So the varieties that we have here, and I've actually listed them on one of your papers with different varieties of products that grow well in Florida. The varieties that we have here do well in Florida. These varieties you want to get in relatively soon. You don't want to plant these varieties past May because the heat factor brings on way too much disease as well as humidity. And also many tomatoes, especially if they're open pollinated, their fruit will not set if the temperature does not drop past a certain degree. And I want to say it's like 67 degrees. So if your night temperature isn't getting lower than 67, you're not going to get fruit. You're spending a lot of time and effort to raise a bush. That's it. So the varieties that grow well, I listed some cherries as well as some beefsteaks. Those are on your second sheet. There's a whole slew of information there for different seeds that do well in Florida. So yes, tomatoes are more difficult in Florida. A lot of times I recommend the determinate varieties, which is your bush variety. Bless you. They tend to do much better, and they actually are quicker to yield. Yes, sir.
What size pot should you use for a tomato?
That's a great question. Small. Honestly, we've trialed many different sizes of buckets for our tomatoes. The smallest that we have been able to get away with in indeterminate varieties, which are your long vining varieties, is a 5-gallon size, a true 5-gallon. Not the 5-gallon, which is actually a 3-gallon, a true 5-gallon. So we have purchased in mass quantities food grade. They have to be food grade 5-gallon buckets. And we drill holes, and that's what we utilize. So a lot of stores, especially your restaurants, they bring in food grade 5-gallon, and they'll sell them to you dirt cheap. Just make sure they're food grade, 5-gallon. In the determinate varieties, which is your bush varieties, those you can get away with growing in 3-gallon. I don't recommend it. You don't get a big yield when you do 3-gallon. You really need to do 5-gallon for those two, but you can get away with 3-gallon. You're just not gonna get, a 20-pound yield. Good question. Question?
When you say season, do you mean once a year, or some crops have more than one season?
Yeah, let me clarify that. So we do know we have 4 seasons. But with Florida farmers, we kind of just morph everything into one season because it's a long growing season of multiple different, crops that we can grow. However, the season that I'm specifically talking about for lettuce production would be fall, winter, spring. Summer is out. You can grow peppers really well. You can grow some eggplant. But I would really, really take an okra, if you guys like okra, but I would really take a step back and not waste a lot of time in the summer. It's just too brutal in Florida. The heat and humidity just takes its toll on plants and us.
So that's 3 seasons.
3 seasons. 1 season off. Doesn't that sound like a dream? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a problem with nematodes in growing your tomatoes?
Yes, nematodes are a huge problem. She asked about nematodes in tomatoes specifically. Nematodes in Florida are a huge problem because we have sand and they like it. So what we typically do is we plant a cover crop. Now, mind you, I'm growing acres of food. You guys wouldn't have to do this. You could do marigolds. You could plant marigolds with your tomatoes. You can do companion planting zinnias with your tomatoes. Things that are typically nematode resistant, which are your marigolds, zinnias, sunflowers. We put in sun hemp, which is a legume. It's a cover crop. That's why we plant that. One of the reasons why we plant that every summer. And that is a nematode suppressor. And we put that in every field throughout the summer. And that cures us of our nematodes. If we have a flare up of nematodes during our season when we're producing, then we use companion planting. Marigolds, zinnias, things that are typically nematode resistant. And there's a lot of varieties of hybrids, especially in Johnny's, that you'll see are nematode resistant. Good question. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
How about beans?
Beans or beets?
Beans.
Beans. Yeah, I like them. Do you like them?
Do they grow well?
They do well. Now's the time to plant beans, guys. So we typically in zone 9 expect our last frost the 1st to 2nd week of March. This winter's been a little funky for everyone, but I'm grateful because it's knocked some of our pest and disease pressure down with the freezes. But this is the perfect time to put beans in. How many of you guys have heard of Blue Lake green beans? Pretty much everybody. So that's what we typically grow on our farm. I actually have some starts here so you can get ahead of the game. They do very well. They love the heat. I would not recommend growing anything past late June and into July and August. I would just hold everything unless you have existing peppers in the garden. You can leave those. But I wouldn't try planting anything new. I would hold off and start planting those again, late August, early September. Beans especially. But yes, beans do very well. Many varieties. I prefer bush just because it's less work for me in the field. But if you like the standard vining variety, or runners as they call them, they do excellent, especially this time of year. Big yields. Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Cucumbers. Yes. Cucumbers do well this time of year. They do well in the fall. They don't do well in our shorter winter months, or shorter daylight winter months. So you kind of want to hold off unless you're flooding them with artificial light. December through February, but this time of year cucumbers do great. It's warm, the days are longer, so we have varieties of cucumber here. These cucumbers you have to trellis. You don't want to let these cucumbers lay on the ground. Again, in Florida, lots of humidity, which means lots of fungal and bacteria diseases, and that you always want to keep your fruit up off the ground because that's where those diseases breed and that's how they spread. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned eating the greens for sweet potatoes, and I've had beet greens that I think are very, very nice. While you're growing the sweet potatoes, or if you're growing beets, can you harvest the greens as they grow, or do you have to choose like one or the other? You get inferior vegetables and pick the greens, or what?
Excellent question. So this gentleman wants to know how picking the greens off of vegetables that are root vegetables affect the root. So let's talk about sweet potatoes specifically, since we are supplementing our salad greens throughout the summer with sweet potato greens. Okay, so it does affect the root. but in a positive way. So if you're continuously harvesting off of your vines, specifically your sweet potato vines, you're keeping that plant focused on putting its energy where? Right on the root. Because you're cleaning up. It doesn't have to, vine out and make lots of sunlight catchers for photosynthesis and all that scientific madness. So it does. It actually improves the size of your roots when you're clipping continuously off of your root vegetables for greens. Same thing with beets. And actually, the bigger the beet, the sweeter. So, good question. Am I missing anybody? Question in the back. She's trying to catch shade from this magnolia tree. It's pretty cute.
What about growing lettuce in the summer hydroponically?
Okay, so that can be done. She wants to know about growing lettuce in the summer hydroponically. Many of us don't have hydroponic system, but that's a valid point because a lot of us do have tower gardens and they're becoming increasingly popular. Yes, it can be done because you're continuously keeping the core temperature of that plant stable through hydroponics or your water system. So yes, that is the way to grow lettuce if you want a continuous yield of lettuce even through the summer is hydroponically.
Then I have a netting over mine so that it does get filtered sun, but not the heavy.
Beautiful.
Is that okay?
Absolutely. She has some shade cloth or netting so it's getting some filtered light, which is what you would want to do, of course, even hydroponically in the summer because we're getting into, double, triple digits. Not double, we're double now, triple. So yes, hydroponic you can grow throughout the summer because you're keeping the core temperature of that plant stable. I still recommend shade cloth to protect it from the brutal afternoon direct sun. Anything that requires pollination to make fruit, make sure it's hybrid, make sure it's greenhouse appropriate, even if you're putting it in a screen room, or you're gonna be hand pollinating. It's a good question. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
The sweet potato thing, could I put that into an earth box or does it need to be in a bigger container?
So yeah, sweet potatoes, she wants to know if she can put it in an earth box or a similar size container. You can. I actually highly recommend with sweet potatoes and potatoes in general, putting them in containers. 5-gallon bucket, again. I say this because it saves you a ton of money and they're super reusable. So you get season after season use. So you're not throwing plastics into the earth. 5-gallon buckets do great. You're gonna want to basically start your potatoes. This is for starchy potatoes too. Put about this much media or soil in the bottom, put your slips in, cover them with a little bit of dirt, let them come up. Let them come up about 3 inches and you're gonna layer them again with dirt until they reach all the way to the top. And every time you layer the dirt in, it's going to produce spuds or sweet potatoes. So every layer is going to be an opportunity for more potatoes. So just continuously layer. It takes a little longer, but it's also very rewarding to watch your babies pop up. And that happens pretty quickly with sweet potatoes specifically. So layer, 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 layer. 5-gallon bucket or container, just do the layer trick. You're gonna get more root and you're also gonna get healthier plants.
How much time in between layers?
So I let my slips or starts get about 3 inches in height before I layer them again, and always leave about this much. That's about an inch, right? Half an inch, sticking up so it can retrieve that sunlight, receive it. Yes, ma'am.
How do you keep tomatoes from getting leggy? Do you pinch them back?
Leggy?
Yeah.
Yes, so indeterminate tomatoes. She wants to know how to keep tomatoes from getting leggy. Indeterminate, again, vining tomatoes. You have to pluck the suckers. It's one of my favorite jobs. Yes, you pluck suckers. You continuously do that. We do our suckers every 2 weeks in our greenhouse. We go through and just trim, 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 pluck, pluck, pluck. I could teach you how to do it if I had a tomato in front of me. I don't. These guys don't have suckers. We've already taken care of them. So look it up on YouTube. Great videos there on how to prune tomatoes. You definitely want to do that again. It's going to put more focus on producing fruit versus foliage. Yes, ma'am.
How do you grow zucchini? I failed.
Ew. Me too. Okay, so our farm's a little unique. zucchini. She wants to know how to grow it. We do not grow summer squash anymore at our farm. We have a tremendous stink and squash bug population. It's very unique and diverse, I've been told, which is why University of Florida follows us. It's not pleasant. We can't grow squash, and I'm not going to dedicate greenhouse space to squash production. But again, you want to utilize your cooler, yet still warm months. So early fall, you want to plant, and also you want to plant again about this time, maybe even a little bit earlier. And that's going to prevent your powdery mildews. It's going to prevent a lot of your pest pressure, especially caterpillars that love to get into the fruit. I would also recommend if you have a Lanai, because Florida is known for being a brutal state when it comes to squash production, getting a greenhouse variety and planting them in your Lanai. The caterpillars are ferocious here. Diatomaceous earth does help, but you definitely want to use that in the evening hours so it does not affect our pollinators, specifically bees. Questions? Anybody? Okay, we're all melting.
Aubrey,
Oh, so sorry.
can you repeat the name of the nematode ground cover you use?
Sure, she wants me to repeat the name of the nematode cover crop that we use, and that is sun hemp, SUNN HEMP. It's not marijuana. Everybody calm down. It is a legume, and it's beautiful. It's going to get really tall. It's fast-growing, heat-loving crop, originated in India. We love it. University of Florida loves it. The nematodes hate it, which is why we love it. It also dumps about 10 times more nitrogen into your soil than traditional cover crops. So feel good about planting that crop because it's sucking this carbon from the air, reducing our greenhouse emissions by doing that, and pumping your soil full of nitrogen. Questions? You've got a question.
Would you do anything different? See, our Lanai has sun the majority of the day. Could you plant the garden in containers inside the Lanai?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I would make sure, again, if you're planting in the Lanai, greeny leafy vegetables, you don't have to worry about the varieties so much because you're not relying on pollination for fruit. But if you're planting any kind of squash or tomato in your Lanai, you definitely want to make sure you get a greenhouse variety that doesn't require manual pollination. That's going to save you a lot of time and frustration. And you can find, again, those seeds, Johnny's, it'll say greenhouse. They actually have a whole tab. I found that out after the fact. A whole tab for greenhouse varieties that you can click on until your heart's content. I think there's probably over 300 varieties that they have on there.
Because you would think if you had the room that you wouldn't have to worry about pests and stuff.
You would think, but that's not the case. He said you would think if you have the room, you wouldn't have to worry about pests. It's funny. It's funny because my first year of farming, the first time we ever cultivated our property, we didn't have a lot of pest pressure. We don't use chemicals. I mentioned that. We do everything regeneratively, which means we rely on Mother Nature to keep everything in check. So I felt like a rock star. I was like, I'm a natural farmer. I got this down. The second year, the bugs told the other bugs that we were there, and it was a mass feast. And we lost, I would say, 60% of our yields that season, and then another 50% the next season. But by the end of season 3, we started balancing out. We started seeing the natural predators coming in and consuming our pests. So there was a really beautiful balance that we saw play out, and just being mindful of companion planting and also cover crops, which ones we should plant that are beneficial for our soil versus, the ones we really don't benefit our soil. So yeah, you would think, but that one planting and you get one good harvest and then all the bugs run out and tell the other bugs.
But how would they get in?
They're everywhere. Mostly.
If it's inside the Lanai.
Oh, the Lanai. So they won't. The Lanai should be fine. You shouldn't have that kind of pressure. You just, when you plant in Lanai, you have to be mindful of the hybrid varieties, the greenhouse varieties. Yeah, I think the Lanai is a beautiful place to grow, especially in Florida, especially late in the season. You just have to be mindful of your varieties that you're growing in there and your sun positioning. Again, morning sun's best when we get hot. Yeah, so she wants to know what's simple to grow here. So honestly, I always recommend never farming in the summer in Florida. These are my starter tips because it's pointless unless you're experienced, and even experienced, you fail. I also recommend lettuces, believe it or not, because they're simple, they don't require much, and you can grow them throughout the season. Very easy crop. Many culinary herbs, which we brought a few today, also incredibly easy to grow. These things build your confidence. The more difficult crops would be your tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplant. These things are more difficult. Scallions are super easy. Throw some scallions in the ground and you'll get scallions all season long. So great question. Start with simple. If you're not familiar with Florida gardening and you're not really familiar with gardening, stay away from tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants. Stay away from those things for a while until you build your confidence. The things that we brought today, excluding the tomatoes, which are these Florida varieties that are easier to grow, but still challenging, are easy to grow in Florida. So we brought dill, cilantro, sishu, which is one of my favorites. It's an Asian green. The lettuces, all of those things, great to grow this time of year. Yes, sir.
Where can you get some to start some scallions if those are easy?
So scallions, again, Johnny's, especially this time of year, because they're gearing up for our northern counterparts to sell. They're getting into growing season. We're coming out of growing season. It's funky, it's crazy. They will have all of your seeds, including scallion starts. And I'm not, again, promoting Johnny's. It's someone we use, and it's very easy, user-friendly website to get your seed with tons of information on growing. Anybody else? No? Okay. Do you think I covered enough? Because I'm melting. Is anybody else melting? I feel like I have a little mustache. You guys, we did bring these to start your home garden. We have a ton of varieties, like I mentioned, cucumbers, lettuces, all heat tolerant. Your cilantro, which is the slowest bolt cilantro. In case you guys like cilantro, I love it. Dill, again, slow bolting, easy to grow. These are all for sale. We have everything set up. We take cash, card, whatever you have, credit, volunteer work, we'll take that too. Help yourself. The 4 packs of our vegetables are $2.75, which is a banging bargain. And then our singles, which are these guys, they're $1.75. So if you guys are interested, please be mindful of social distancing, but these guys are up for grabs. And thank you. I'd like to say thank you guys very much for having me, and let's get growing.
Thank you for joining today with Aubrey Cash of Dirty Dog Organics for our Grow a Salad program. It was fantastic, and the sun was great and cooperative, and we are thrilled with our venue here. For more information about programs that we're having at the Leesburg Public Library, either outside or virtually, please check our website at leesburgflorida.gov. You can check our Facebook page. We're pretty active on that, and that's Leesburg Public Library. And also, if you would need to find out about everything that's going on and you would like an email sent to you every Saturday morning, we do have a list that we send out, all of our current events, new reads, new programs, and please send your request to receive that email to librarian@leesburgflorida.gov. Again, that's librarian@leesburgflorida.gov. Thank you.